Sporting Journal Radio, presented by Onyx.
Well, due to a number of factors, including not having power around here and some bad weather conditions, Dan and I didn't fish for the opener yet. Didn't fish on the opening weekend, and really, as of this time, haven't fished at all yet since the season's been open. But I know a lot of guys have been out there. They've been catching walleyes, and we're going to find out how things went up at Lake of the Woods right now with Joe Henry from Lake of the Woods Tourism. Joe, how you doing?
Hey, Brad, I'm doing well.
How are the water conditions? Because water is out of control where we're at here. There's water everywhere. Roads around the house here are washed out. You know, there's only one road into my place right now. I think it's starting to come back down a little bit, but we got quite a bit of rain again here this week. And I know the Rainy River has been pretty high, and the Red River is really high right now. How's it up at Lake of the Woods?
Just like Lake Wobegon. Everything's great. Everybody's getting along, you know.
Good.
No. You know, I'll tell you, and much like other parts of the region, you know, we do have a lot of water in our system. So the gates coming out of Rainy Lake that flow into Rainy River are wide open. The gates up at Kenora, Ontario, where Lake of the Woods goes out, they're wide open. We do have some of the resort docks are underwater, so of course resorts have taken measures to put, you know, whether it's pallets or other sections of docks so people can get to the charter boats and things. There are a few accesses to our east of Baudette, way over there, that are getting a little bit flooded. Some are usable, some aren't. But like Wheeler's Point is golden, that's great, and other, you know, resort accesses. So you know what, there's some things that aren't perfect, but people are getting out fishing, and boy, thankfully fishing's really good.
Yeah, my goodness. I've got a few friends that were up there this week, and I got some messages from them showing them just hammering walleyes up there, Joe.
It's been good. It was, you know, we thought it would be a good opener. It's normally a good opener. And, you know, with a late spring like we had, there were a lot of walleyes in the river still. Now, the challenge was that current is ripping so hard that it was hard to go in a main river hole and fish them, because literally, I talked to one guy who had a 1 ounce jig, and he said you just get swept downstream. And what they ended up doing, it was real interesting. What they ended up doing is they ended up finding some slack water closer to shore, and they could go in there with, you know, like a 1/2 ounce jig and do just fine in that slack water. But you know, one thing about that rushing water is that it can be a pro and a con. Now, it can take a lot of the spots that you would normally fish out of commission in some ways. But the other thing is, when you do find walleyes, a lot of times they'll be congregated because they're all kind of focused in the same areas. So once they found the walleyes, they whacked the heck out of them. They just had to find them at first. I will tell you too that, you know, the reports on the lake. So a lot of people go out in front of the Lighthouse Gap, out in front of Pine Island, and fish that area. And, you know, there are a lot of fish caught out there. There are a ton of fish out there. The water was a little dirty because of the Rainy River pushing so much water, and that's been running at flood stage. So it's pushing some dirty water through as well. So that made fishing a little bit tougher. Still caught fish, but it was a little bit tougher. So for instance, I spoke to some guys who said that they slid over to the west a little bit, and although they didn't find as many walleyes because the water was a little clearer, a much larger percentage of the walleyes they saw in their electronics bit. They were spread out. I mean, some people fish 4 Mile Bay in 6 feet of water. Other people are fishing out in the lake in 20 feet of water. So from about 6 to 20 feet was kind of the go-to. Jig and a minnow, bright jigs because of some of the stain in the water, and a lot of big fish caught. I mean, the eaters were caught, the smalls were caught, but then the slots and some trophies, and there were a lot of big fish caught for the opener.
You know, I hear about shiners, of course, up at Lake of the Woods and the Rainy River quite frequently. And I've heard more about using plastics in the river in recent years. For whatever reason, and maybe I'm just blocking it out for whatever reason or just haven't heard it, but I don't hear about guys using plastics as much on the lake as I have in the river, but I'd assume plastics would work out there as well.
You know, I think they will. And, you know, I can tell you, like, for instance, up at the Northwest Angle, a lot of our folks that go fishing up there, some will fish the Minnesota side, and some will slide over into Ontario waters of Lake of the Woods and fish that area. So when that happens, it's one of those things where they have to use plastic. You cannot bring any kind of live or dead bait across the border from the United States into Canada anymore. Even night crawlers that are packed in bedding instead of soil used to be okay, but not anymore. Frozen bait, frozen minnows used to be okay. Dead minnows used to be okay. Not anymore. It has to be all dead. Now, with that being said, people have been forced to use plastics, and at least up in the islands area, they've done very, very well. And they've been actually very happily surprised. Hey, there's pros and cons. One thing about a plastic, nowadays, with some of the different Berkeley products, and there's others, but they got it impregnated with scent. They got all different paddle tails, twister tails, all different colors. You can cast them without your bait falling off. If you're jigging over the side of the boat and you get hit, you set that hook. Well, if you had bait, normally your bait would be off. That walleye is still hot, even though it missed it. You can drop that plastic down for round 2, and usually that fish is hot. They'll give you another shot at it. So there are some pros to using plastics, and so that what I do know some people on the main lake that use plastics. Most are still using live baits. I'll tell you this: when I fish tournaments on Lake of the Woods and I'm jigging over the side of the boat, oftentimes what I'll do is I would call it the full meal deal, but I would use a jig with a plastic on it. I'd use like a Emerald Shiner Berkeley Gulp Alive, and I would put that on my main jig, and then I'd put a frozen emerald, I'd put a piece of night crawler, then I'd put a stinger hook, then I'd put 2 halves frozen shiners on one on each hook, and then the third hook I'd put another piece of night crawler. It looked like a bulka, just crazy, but bulked up in that stained water and looking for bigger fish. So I'd be jigging that, and fish loved it. And then, when I'd set the hook and miss one, I still had that plastic on there. So if that fish was still hot, I still had that profile. They'd come back and hit me again. It's funny. I told that to one of the locals up there, and he said, "Al, that's only the 2/3 full meal deal. You forgot the leech."
Oh yeah, it's like opening an all-you-can-eat buffet and just casting a wide net, trying to get something to bite. We fished a lake last year. Dan and I were fishing, and we were in a congregated kind of community hole, and nobody was catching fish around us, and we're all using minnows, fatheads or creek chubs or something, I'm sure. And we switched to plastics, and all of a sudden we started catching walleyes, and everyone was kind of side-eyeing us just a little bit, and we were trying not to show them our secret a little bit, but caught some pretty nice fish. And the plastics that day, whether it was something different or what the deal was definitely the ticket. Joe,
I got to tell you though, Brett. I will say this too. Don't you think a lot of it has to do with confidence?
Well, I was losing confidence in the live bait that day and wanted to try something different. And there is a plastic that I have that's kind of a go-to on that lake, and I've got a lot of confidence in it because it's done real well for me.
I just think that you just have to get out and try stuff. I was talking to a friend of mine who. So a buddy of mine from high school in central Minnesota has a small company called, I'll just tell you, it's real small, Lena Lures. It's a bass fishing company, but he's got some different swim baits and stuff. And when we were out bass fishing together, which is totally against my religion, if you don't know, I'm a walleye guy, so we give each other a hard time. But I told Todd, I said, it's just a swim bait, right? He goes, Joey, those swim baits are so good. All you got to do is cast it and reel it. You don't have to get fancy with jigging it, and they're fairly weedless. You can cover water, and everything will hit them. And that's coming from a bass guy who accidentally catches nice walleyes doing that. And really, from the walleye world, all a swim bait is to us is just a paddle tail on a jig. That's all it is.
Yeah, right.
So, this time of year, sometimes you don't want to get real fancy jigging it. You almost want it just coming through the water nice and steady. A lot of times you'll catch more fish with that cold water.
Well, what did we see on McComas or Target Walleye they had a 29-inch walleye on there. They were bass fishing
with chatterbait.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, and in fact, I saw James Linder give a presentation at an NPA, National Professional Angling Association, meeting, and his whole presentation was catching a lot of nice walleyes on bass tackle. He talked about chatterbaits. He talked about wacky worms. He talked about, what I mean? So, but part of that is you're fishing in areas sometimes with those baits that you wouldn't normally be fishing walleyes. A lot of it's thicker weeds.
That's where you'd find the walleyes sometimes, and they're so hard to get in there to catch. You brought up crossing the border, Joe, and somebody asked me about this. A lot of people are starting to think about going to the Canadian side. Now that things are a little more relaxed. They're still not completely relaxed. I know there's some people out there that are still wondering about vaccination statuses to cross the border, and I know every month they make decisions on border. Have you heard any type of rumors or any type of chatter about maybe changing things, or do you think it's going to stay the same for a while?
I haven't heard anything. I think, and just to make it straight right now as we speak, you got to be vaccinated. You got to use the ArriveCAN app. You do not need a COVID test to go up. So that's kind of where things stand. I've not heard any changes. I'll be meeting with the Canadian Consulate and Canada Border Services Agency later next week, I guess. So yeah, I'll find out more. But you know what? I've heard nothing on the radar screen right now. It is what it is. And, I know some people that have actually gotten vaccinated because they want to get into Canada.
Yeah. Well, yep. I know a lot of people, and I know a lot of people that haven't got it that aren't taking trips to Canada because of it. So curious to see as the summer fishing tourism season begins, if anything else will change up there or not. But if nothing else, we'll just go back to Lake of the Woods.
Well, I'll tell you, it's so funny because we have a tale of two lakes, right? So on the south end, our south end resorts have been benefiting a little bit from some of the people not going to Canada because they go to the next best thing in their minds. And then our northwest angle resorts, that's where you have to travel 40 miles through Canada and then re-enter back into the United States if you're going to go there by vehicle. So that area in some ways have been hurt, just like the Canadian resorts have been hurt, because in essence, you're going, now the only caveat to that is that you can get up to the angle by staying in the U.S. if you go by boat or by plane. But other than that, so we've had our struggles up in that part of Lake of the Woods as well.
So before we let you go, Joe, we got to bring up Sturgeon just because I saw Darren Troseth just put up a YouTube video this week. And when he posted about it, he said, "A fun trip to the Rainy River with about as many big fish as I cared to catch. We didn't keep track, but I'm guessing about 40 total for 3 days of fishing. Yeah, I know it's way too long of a video, but whatever." and he was posting all these big fish pictures. I mean, just some big sturgeon. And then he was starting to edit, and he was asking for help. Like, "Hey guys, I got a lot of big fish that we're fighting in this video. Do you want to see the whole fight? Because the video is going to be really long." And I commented, like, when I edit fish videos for some of these big fish, if it's a 15-minute fight, at some point it's like, all right, you're going to fast forward or it's going to be too long or you're going to lose interest. So I end up having to try to edit creatively, like most TV shows that are, confined to 22 minutes of broadcast time. You have to get creative in some of those fish fights. Of course, YouTube, you can do whatever you want, but man, he hammered big sturgeon up there, Joe.
I'll tell you, I saw one post or one comment from some anglers. They said, and their comment on Facebook was something to the effect of, "The freaking Rainy River is the real deal when it comes to sturgeon. We had 30 fish today, oh, yeah." So that, some people really hit it this year. And, it just goes to show that it's possible. Those fish are in good numbers. We got a lot of big fish again this year. It bodes well. And I'll tell you what, right now the sturgeon season's closed. It closed May 15th was the last day. It's going to be closed until July 1st. And then July 1st, it opens up again all the way into the fall, and that's the keep season. So if somebody ever wanted to come up and keep one that's between 45 and 50 inches or one over 75 inches, one per calendar year, you could come up and get one, and some people smoke them, and other people just choose to let them go. We have enough fish in the system that if you wanted to keep one, trust me, the DNR is watching it real close, and the population's just fine.
Yeah, the good old days are here, I think, for sturgeon fish, and they just keep getting better year after year. Well, Joe, if people want to learn more about making a trip to the Rainy River or Lake of the Woods, or they want to get more info about season dates and regulations, you post all that stuff, too, on your website and social media?
Yeah, you know what? We have a real active, Instagram and Facebook page. Just search Lake of the Woods Tourism. And, our resorts are also real good resources for information. Otherwise, our website, we try to keep real active, real current. And that is lakeofthewoodsmn.com.
Hear more at sportingjournalradio.com or wherever you get podcasts. Northern Minnesota's Walleye Factory is a year-round world-class fishing destination. The perfect getaway this summer is just a short drive to Lake of the Woods. Fish Big Traverse Bay, the Rainy River, or visit the unique Northwest Angle. To catch big fish, you have to go where the big fish are. Plan your trip to Lake of the Woods at lakeofthewoodsmn.com. That's lakeofthewoodsmn.com.